So, over there. Yeah, so, and don't forget your stage left audience over there. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited about tonight. And I want to thank Laurie Pike, actually came up with the idea. Laurie, over there. Because I really wanted it to be first year impressions, first year writing, first year thoughts. Unclouded by, that time you bumped into like Andy Warhol at the deli. 40 years later, it's like I went to studio with Andy and Bianca. So now I do the real truth, and I'm so excited about our lineup tonight. So, and I actually did keep a diary for just my first few years in New York. I moved here in the fall of '79, so this is my 40th anniversary in New York. Lost the diary I'd been keeping, so I started a new one on New Year's Eve of 1979-80. So I was actually in Boston when I started. So first I was going to do mine. It's short, and so I was actually in Boston when I started. So the first couple of entries are in Boston, but they're about New York, and then I came to New York. And I just wanted to quickly the only three characters you need to know are my friend Richie, who was my drag queen friend from Boston, who we met when we were both teenagers at the clubs in Boston. He moved to New York right before me. And my best friend David, and this guy Victor, who was the drug dealer at the Mud Club, who I was madly in love with. He had no idea who I was, but I was obsessed with him. So anyway, diary. I hereby resolve to write in here whenever I want to, and if I should die before I wake, this book is for David to take. New Year's Eve, 1979, Boston. Dear Mr. Now Blonde Ultra Blue Richie is spending New Year's Eve in our beloved Xenon. Details I shall hear tomorrow. I hope he found his mini skirt. Dear David, I thought of you within milliseconds of midnight. Kisses. January 1st, 1980. Nora catches 40,000 winks. I've become such a late sleeper. Ollie, my dog, and I were kidnapped and dog-napped to Lexington with Davy Poo. Victor, Victor, Victor. I like to pretend he likes me and thinks of me often, at least when he's not thinking about heroin. January 17th, 18th, and 19th, New York City. Home again. Studio bye-bye Steve Who Cares party Thursday, Friday night now, 3 a.m. off to Mud after attempted rapes at the pub with Richie Leach. Fun though! Oh, and I was calling Richie a leech because by January he'd gotten kicked out of his apartment. He was living in my Barnard dorm with me. I don't know how we got away with that, but we did. Saw Kai, Judy, Nina, Pretty Boy, who's Hal Ludiker, other familiars with unknown names, and of course, last but hardly least, saw Vic Baby, looking Elle extraordinaire, dog collar and all. I'm happy to be home. January 21st. Today is the historic day Nora finally persuades Richie to move out of her humble abode, and finally she smiles. January 23rd, Mud with Richie and Brewster. He moved out, so finally we're friends again. January 25th, Mud last night, and then the nursery thanks to Novak. I have no idea who that is. The DJ gave me so much coke. Some truck driver drove me home. People are really nice to me. Victor, come away with me. January 30th. After attending an anti-draft rally today, I realize how decadent I've become. I like disco. I work out twice a day. I go to studio. I love Coke. I drink Tab and Perrier. And I diet. January 31st. Craig Russell party at New York, New York. Xenon, studio, our bizarre night. Nora and Richie in electric tape did the town, ending up with Richie throwing up all over 54 as Nora was chased by the doorman demanding a blowjob. February 1st, Columbia Gay Dance with Richie all taped up. Bizarre blast. February 8th, it's hard to believe it's only Friday. I wore Richie's dress to Mud. Victor and I did judo until my arm disjointed and I said mate. Everyone everyone seems to be 22 or older. I wouldn't let myself still be there then. Richie's pretty incapable of talking about anything but drag queens. I don't know how many times I've heard, Ava's a guy, Monique has a cock, Patasa, this, that, and the other thing. I'm starting to do it too. It's such a lovely day, I ran in shorts. February 10th. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. Ha, pas moi. I use French a lot, I don't know why. Last soir, we went to New York, New York, where I saw the pretty punk bartender who tried to pick me up at Mud, and Paul, the dumb waiter who keeps calling me. Then to Xenon, where I got horribly drunk on my new drink, white wine and OJ, but was inspired to wild dancing by my wonderful busboys. And Richie gave Mick Jagger a blowjob. Then we went to Mud and Fat Michael drag queen. I don't know that. And despite it all, it's still Victor who I love. Though he adores Alex, who looks like the Wicked Witch of the West. I love Richie. We're getting related or something. I always miss him if he's not here. I have $4 in the bank. March 1st. It's been a weird week. Can I blame it on the moon? Might as well. Davey and I took the train down from Boston Tuesday, and the Nora, David, Richie trio did the New York, Xenon Mud rounds Tuesday and Wednesday. Mark came Thursday, and we all had a fun night at Mud while Davey videotaped the Manhattan Project band. All love for Richie, re-entreed et je l'aime. Friday wasn't so super. Davey, Mark, Richie, and I did the old New York Xenon route, but Richie was druggy and independently flippy, which I can handle, but not Davey. So they went to Studio's Grave, and I got drafted to Mud with Richie. Saturday and Sunday were just sad for us all. Richie has no home, and I love him so much. Last night, Richie and I went to the Kennedy party at Xenon because I had to see Brooke Shields. Kennedy people are so straight. I got really good coke, and for a while I thought I was standing on the top of the world forever. And then suddenly I fell to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. April 30th. How quickly a week passes. I haven't slept since Thursday night. Friday was such fun. New York, Xenon with Richie and Reagan. I love Reagan, so what a wonderfully wild woman. I don't think of her as a man at all. I'm not attracted to her, but I do love her. She taught me how to hustle for drugs, etc. I don't know what the etc. is. Or rather made it fun, a fun game. We make a good team. I can't believe everyone's not wearing minis. I did speed at 4 a.m. Couldn't sleep, tous les jours. I was so fucked up with drugs and drinks I don't remember much. Making out with Richie and looking awfully fucked up. I missed my train stop and had to walk back from Harlem. Richie went to UK till 2 p.m. I have a 10-page paper due tomorrow. So, needless to say, I flunked out. Richie bottomed out and moved back to Boston. My friend David moved to New York, and then the rest was more craziness. But anyway, so thank you so much for coming. And so I'm going to start with Laurie Pike, who originated tonight, the idea for tonight. And she and I, we met writing for Paper Magazine in the 80s. Though we realized we'd probably gone back further than that, and then we were dear friends doing, every time I went to LA, I loved seeing Laurie, and she's so inventive and wonderful. So, Laurie Pike.
And then I have my diary entries. I kept diaries pretty religiously. I couldn't translate. I did also wrote a lot in French because I was as pretentious as Nora, if not more. But I also had a code that my friend Gwyneth and I invented when we were 14, and I have no idea. There's like all these squiggles like hieroglyphs. I have no idea what it is. So, to give you a little context, after college in Cincinnati and grad school in Paris, I was living in Cincinnati wondering what to do next. I was working in a restaurant that closed for 6 weeks in summer. So I wrote a letter to Paper Magazine. I saw Kim Hastrader's name on the masthead, and I'm like, yeah, dear Kim, I want to be a an intern at Paper Magazine, and I mailed it to my best friend, who's here tonight, Patrick Lehman. I said, Pat, mail it from New York, so she thinks I live in New York and not this backwater in Ohio. So he mailed it to Paper, and she wrote back, because that's what we did back then. She wrote back, yeah, that sounds great, come in Monday. And I'm like, fuck. So I get on a plane, and I go to New York, and I get off the plane, and it was warm out, it's summertime, and Patrick and I walked to Union Square Cafe, and it was like, I was 24 years old, and I'm like, you feel so in sync with the city, and like, not only do you feel in sync with the city, you feel like you own the whole fucking, I got that feeling, and I'm like, I'm totally not going back to Ohio. So as soon as the 6 weeks of an internship in Paper was up, or the 6 weeks with the restaurant was up, I went back, packed my bags, moved in with Patrick in his studio apartment in Chelsea. So I got a job at the Odeon for money, and I worked at Paper for free, and my first apartment, because I had lived with Pat for all summer in this tiny apartment, my first apartment that I got was in a small dark duplex on Bleecker Street that I shared with a guy named Doug. He was a cook at Exterminator Chili, remember Exterminator? And it goes without saying, he was a total heroin junkie. So, October 1987. The Odeon is the most expensive and exclusive place I've ever worked. There's even a part of the manual concerning waiting on celebrities. After work, I had lunch, duck liver pate and herb roasted chicken. I walked to Paper, but started to feel sick, so I had to miss the editorial meeting. Rats! When I got home, I wanted to barf, but couldn't. Pulled off my clothes and took the last codeine left over from having my wisdom teeth pulled. My roommate, Doug, ate all of them. I went to bed. It had to be the food. December 87. People here are just like people in Cincinnati and Paris. They dress differently, but their impulses are the same. Everyone is just trying to figure out everyone else's cover while projecting a foil of their own. I went to Rick Hamilton's to get the dress that he made for me for the Junior League Christmas ball. It was incredible, perfect. He had it all spread out on his bed with a lit candle on a table, and he told me to change. I took the subway to the Gramercy, I guess the Gramercy Hotel, to meet Laura, my new roommate, and a very handsome man with long brown hair and a camel hair coat followed me into the lobby. He asked me if I was a model or an artist. I said no, but I did work for Paper Magazine. He said he was a playwright and that I looked just like a character he invented in a play. He was Italian and spoke broken English. He talked about the inevitability of casual acquaintances and how color is a manifestation of energy. Where does it go in the dark? The ball at the gorgeous Lycée Français at 95th and 5th. Downstairs there was a DJ, there was an entry hall, a big spiral staircase, another hall, and a band. The first girl I noticed was a Tamma Janowitz kind of girl, with a big nose and tons of brown hair and a gold snagnet outfit with matching shoes. We exchanged friendly glances. So much beauty and cleavage galore. I saw a couple making out behind a curtain by the French windows. We left to go downstairs and we ran into Rick Hamilton and his friend Maud. I couldn't believe it. Rick said to me, Maud knows everyone here from boarding schools, indicating to me that she'd been kicked out of one or two. She's younger than me and the assistant fashion editor at Mademoiselle. I like her. Everyone seemed approachable. The men really looked at us. Rick came up to me elated, saying that he was talking with a Women's Wear Daily reporter who said there wasn't much fashion here. Oh, except for this one dress with a long red train. And Rick said, I made that dress. And the reporter said, oh, well, we snapped photos. I would love to see myself in a Rick Hamilton original in W. January 1988. I don't like to think about Cincinnati for the same reason I don't like to think about Camden. This is Camden, Maine, a little town that I went to high school in. I buried a Laurie Pike in each city and I don't want to walk on the grave for fear I'll resurrect her. Questions pop into my head. Why am I not in Paris? But today what's on my mind is my awful skin condition. I am convinced I maintain these sores myself with some hate. New York eats money. I must not give in to the consumer insanity of designer clothes, jewelry, clubs, drugs. Well, maybe drugs are okay. I'm recognizing so much anger and jealousy in me. My nervousness makes me nervous. Today's modeling was brutal. This is for a Charles Rodin shoe ad. I smoked pot before leaving and had a lovely sunny walkover. When I got there, Marcia said gravely that there was a problem. I was so scared because Japanese people don't exaggerate. The problem was my ass is red in one shot and some pubic hairs show, which is against Japanese law. I said I would cut or shave them. It turned out the makeup guy did. He shaved my butt crack with a a straight edge razor while I was on my stomach on a feather comforter. April 1988. I have searched in myself, why can't I get along with straight men? Am I scared of them? Or is it just they're just so boring compared to fags? The cool straight one seems so far away. I dream of a Simon and Garfunkel winter in New York, late breakfast in a diner boyfriend. July 1988. A Vidal Sassoon hairdresser asked me to be a model in a press party for the 20th anniversary of the bob haircut. They cut and dyed my hair. It's special, that world. One woman had lemon yellow hair, I suppose an accident. Very damaged. A brassy redheaded art director was overly tan and wearing a striped silk shirt open to the waist. All the outfits are body conscious tight or design conscious loose. Hairdressers are very intent on flashing their salary. One Italian-looking girl who projected mean vanity wore an all-black stretch outfit, which she kept brushing to lift off the hair that she was styling. She was working on an overweight sales clerk of some department store, that dykey kind of Ivy League look. Their conversation was banal, bordering on zen. I love their seriousness. Not campy at all. Never like, let's work some flip action for the swingy look. More, I'm calling to see how you feel about it because it's been such a change. A cold gray chaos has descended. Commonplace violence, rats and roaches scavenging a waste heap. I think to Tokyo, but then if the world is shot, which it is, we might as well wear wigs, spray them with aerosol hairspray, drag our drugged up, disease-ridden carcasses to the world, and wiggle around until the chandeliers crash to the floor. December 88, took mushrooms with Jeff Kennedy. He's another Cincinnati, and there's a lot of us in New York. Took mushrooms with Jeff Kennedy. He's working at the Royalton, which was new at the time. He says it's empty and the staff is partying non-stop. We giggled a lot and went to the world and danced. Dean and the Weenies played. Do the drag, Deli Boy, I eat my lunch on my knees. Then 3 Stevie Nicks drag numbers. The only people I knew there were Kim Wilbon, Craig Coleman, and Nora Burns. January 89, Clifton Magazine arrived with my short story in an ugly illustration. Splash Magazine came out with my Cowboy Junkie story. Sadly, it's hardly the thrill it used to be. I'm a mess. I got some Charlie Parker records, which doesn't make me feel better, but gives rejection some integrity. Last entry, I smooched with Mark Kostabi after a dinner party we'd both been at. I know, right? Of course he didn't call today. Stuart I didn't see for a week. We had a cocktail date set for last night and he canceled to see a baseball game on TV. Today he called at 8. I was so uptight about the fiction reading at my apartment next week that I set right into him. Stupid. I told him about the meeting. Ugh, stupid. He probably thinks I'm a flipped out manipulator. I am flipped out. I am so lonely I hate men. So lonely I feel insane.
And when I found all my old, crazy old cable shows from like the late 80s, early 90s, Michael was one of my first guests, and I dragged him on all the time, and he's always been the best sport in the world. So, Michael Musto.
Bernie or nothing. Kidding. I would rather blow Mick Jagger. I would rather filch Mick Jagger than make out with Marcus Dobbin. Thank you. Just saying. No, I didn't do journals. I did letters. Remember letters? Yeah. No, I had fallen in love with this guy who had come to New York. I was crazy for him. He rejected me. He said he couldn't have sex with someone he was in love with. And I actually believed that bullshit. Anyway, he moved away and I wrote this letter, and the best thing I ever did in my whole life was not mail it.
Oh, great.
Okay, it is the grandest, most patronizing piece of shit since Greer Garson. August 1981, dear Bill. Since I met you, I've hoped I'd be good for you. To help stabilize you and point you in the right direction. Do you remember the pep talks I used to give you before we started fighting so much? I always told you were going through a struggling phase, but would come out of it victorious, and you have. I'm sure you realize that I wouldn't have been so crazy about you for 2 years if I didn't think you were incredibly special. You have tremendous creative potential, Bill, and there's no question in my mind that you'll go far with your brilliance, wit, and natural talent. I'm sorry if I haven't told you that enough. I'm so glad I didn't mail this. But when you solved your problem about not being able to have sex with people you were in love with, you didn't tell me. I had to hear it from Glenn. The same person who made their own nasty observations about you rejecting me. We have a lot of mutual dishonesty to patch up, Bill. How could we be friends if we hide things from each other? You said I was insecure, William. Well, how could I not be in the situation I'm in? Of course, I'm at fault too. I realize now in trying to get something more than friendship from you, I got something less. I acted immaturely, and I'm sorry you had to be privy to my emotionally growing up. In the past year, I've tried to make up for some of my transgressions, and I feel you've become more sensitive too, and I appreciate that. Let's make our friendship deeper and better in the future. Your love has meant a lot to me, Bill. I'm not really crying, but this is a joke. Opening up to you has helped me open up to people in general. I don't want you to live in my shadow. I just want you to share some of your shadow with me. That would make me so happy. As you know, I feel Glenn has been a bad influence on us. Oh yes, he told me that I was just your ticket to a good time. That all you cared about was that I took you out. He would even close cab doors outside the Mud Club so I wouldn't go out of the cab and say goodnight to you. For example. He later admitted jealousy had something, i.e. everything, to do with that. He felt left out and he wanted to get closer to both of us. I was under his influence and I listened to him, which I regret, and I take full responsibility for what I did.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of you, Bill. Of the way that you've directed yourself towards a goal and worked so hard. I can remember the times you couldn't keep a job. You progressed so far. I truly believe that with all of your confidence, talent, charm, and way of dealing with people, you can't miss. I also need to add that I think you're very handsome. I've never met anyone like you in any way. Even if I never see you again, I'll be proud to say I knew you. I love you, Bill. Even if I never see you again, I'll be proud to say that I knew you. I love you for all that you represent to me. Things won't be the same without you. Goes on a little too long, right? Little redundancy here, and I didn't mail it. Thank you, Jesus. None of our relationship makes sense to me, and I know we've shared some very special moments, and I hope we'll be friends forever. I tried to forget you, just like you tried to forget me, but I couldn't. I don't want to feel hurt about this relationship anymore. I want to be a source of strength for you, and I hope you'll be likewise for me. Bon voyage, baby. Next time I see you, I know you'll be rich and famous. Love, your poodle forever. Mikey.
So Shakespearean, Michael. That was beautiful, and I'm glad you didn't mail that. We're gonna find out who that is. Okay, next, because I saw her posting on Facebook, I think, or Instagram, one of those things, about a friend. It was this journal entry, and I never thought that, you know, I'm always so fascinated when people have kept a journal and have their, you know, have their memories that way. And then when I was doing this night, I was like, oh my God, do you think she'll do it? And she said yes. Laurie, Seid.
Hi, I can't see you, so that's great. I still keep a journal, and I used to keep a journal, but when I got thrown out of my parents' house, in the luck of Laurie, Seid, the card with all my belongings got stolen. So I have no photographs from high school. I have very little stuff from that time, but I have brain cells sometimes that still work. So thanks to a few people, I put this, it's more a story than a journal entry, but it's based on journal entries. And the other precursor, I should say, is I grew up in New York, so Nora was kind enough to say, just, you'll figure it out. And I guess I did. Okay, so here we go. Sorry, I'm very nervous. I'm usually there when I'm recording.
Laurie!
Here we go. Let's see where the light is. Where's my light? Okay. My parents disowned me for sleeping with women. I quit college during a bad hash high. I had no money and nowhere to live. It was obvious these were never going to be the good old days. But then, Katy. Katy dramatically broke up with her boyfriend of 3 years, Dick Hyman, to become my girlfriend. All true, I swear to God. It was a scandalous moment in the lives of her college buddies. Some of them remained loyal to Dick, but most of them that Katy cared about embraced us, saying somehow it made sense. We made love during the first early snowstorm, fall 1980. She slipped a note in my jeans that read, "Let's make snow angels. Meet me at my apartment, 8 p.m. Dress warm." When I got there, Katy already had her coat and hat on and was super hyper and kind of nervous. I hugged her hello and we started to kiss. Clothes got peeled off because in that room on that night, neither of us could be any hotter. We did eventually go out into the snow, but like 2 days later. Then Katy moved me into her bedroom in that apartment she shared with 3 other college friends who all had just moved to New York City together. It was like one big happy family, except for one of the roommates who found it important to continually announce that he was a God-fearing Christian virgin, and the mere existence of my presence was like letting Satan into his own home. Everyone else was cool about me, but he paid rent and I didn't. So the 4 roommates had a house meeting to decide what to do. I was there for that, but when it was time to take a vote on what to do, they asked me to wait in the building hallway. When I got called back in, I was told majority ruled, and I could live in Katy's bedroom. Yeah! I know, I was supposed to be happy, but somehow I kind of felt like a little dirty feral cat that everyone felt bad for. John Lennon's album, Double Fantasy, came out, and I could listen to nothing else. Franklin, the roommate who hated me, said John Lennon was the Antichrist. When no one else was in the apartment but me and him, he'd scream to me to get out. That Jesus died for my sins, and I should repent, and that Jesus is in my heart. I said nothing. One night, me and my buddies were out slamming around bars in the meat market in West Side Highway area. Katy was working late at Macy's, a job she got to support us because I still wasn't doing very much except supplying drugs for everybody. At a particularly heavy leather bar, I saw Franklin in a scene with 3 other guys. Our eyes met, I said nothing, and I didn't tell anyone, not even Katy. A few weeks later, though, I came home really fucked up, and with a thick black magic marker wrote, "Franklin sucks cock," across the living room wall, graffiti style. He moved out that very weekend, saying that living with me in the same apartment made him fear for his life. His new girlfriend came over to help him pack and move, and I relentlessly flirted with her, and much to his horror, she was flirting back by midday. With one less roommate, Kathy took more shifts at Macy's, and I would visit her, filling my coat pockets with stuff I could easily sell for cash. But that made her too nervous, so I started running coke from Spanish Harlem to my friends who worked room service at the Hemsley Palace. Side note, Liza Minnelli. That's it. Right around Christmas, 16 days after the murder of John Lennon, and 5 days before my birthday, I decided it was time to go on a really big trip. I set up 5 LSD sugar cubes on a tray in the fridge. I put a little card in front of each with the day and date written on them, so I was sure not to take more than 1 hit a day. I can't remember much from the first 2 days, but in the daylight of the 3rd cube, I convinced Kathy to go to Central Park with me. We rode the subway up, and Kathy, who wasn't tripping, tried to hide my uncontrollable giggling with her New York Times opened wide in front of us. I was so high I could smell the words on the newspaper, and I felt like I was in a Gumby episode. And I tried to explain that to Kathy, who I was now rather loudly calling Pokey. She was not amused. The subway doors opened right onto the park. Once inside, my body melted and my eyes were on the same level as the ground. Like Wile E. Coyote, you know, when a scheme backfires and he's plowed into the ground with just his eyes and his ears exposed above it. I tried to show Kathy what I meant, but then I flashed into a dream, a recurring childhood dream I had between the ages of 5 and 12, but had since forgotten until that very moment. It was a very peaceful, simple dream in that I was one-dimensional and moved with the wind in the shadows of giant old trees. The sun was so bright and so warm that I had to lay down on the great lawn to find that the ground was frozen crisp. I asked Kathy to lay next to me so she could look inside my brain. I started thinking about fucking Kathy, but she wasn't seeing it or feeling it, so she pulled me up and took me for a walk to the children's zoo. All that Alice in Wonderland stuff in the park started to flip me out, so she redirected me towards the merry-go-round. The circular, warm, people-smelling wind made me sick to my stomach, and the music frightened me like I was in a horror film. The earth started to rotate too fast for me to keep my balance, but before I could panic, Kathy grabbed my hand and slow-danced me to a bench by the hot dog guy. "Wait right here," she instructed me firmly, but with the most beautiful, shiny smile. Before I realized she was gone, she returned with a giant hot pretzel covered with sparkling white blocks and plasticky yellow mustard, the yellowest yellow the world has ever witnessed. Kathy handed me a brown paper bag that held freshly roasted chestnuts. I held the bag up to my nose to smell in the fire, but really, I just wanted to kiss Kathy. She twinkled her eyes at me and kept me at an arm's distance, and she licked and bit into the fleshy pretzel. I needed something in my mouth, so I broke through one of the shells and sunk my teeth into the warm, crumbly nut meat. My body trembled with this humongous, overwhelming LSD chill, and all senses were full blast, and finally, Kathy was feeling the contact high and wanting me too. We walked teasingly, touching, and climbed up the first big rock we could find. It was so high and so isolated that as soon as we reached the very top of it, we fell onto the surface, grinding into each other. The rock became our lost island, and the constant car honking from the street far below became the sounds of the ocean waves lapping at our feet. Grinding harder and harder, my hands under her shirt, tugging and pulling at nipples in what could only be described as an adolescent frenzy, I adjusted my weight on her so I could slip one hand into her pants, and with the heat of her pulsating clit, I could feel every moist, curly hair tense with our hunger. She took a deep breath in. Hello. See me after. Not that old. She took a deep breath in, opening herself to my fingers, and as we arched together, I felt a tapping on my shoulder. I ignored the tapping until it was a firm hand, and then a voice. "Look, guy, you can't do this here." The tone was authoritative yet amused, sort of like Kathy's when she told me to wait on the hot dog bench. "You gotta gotta stop. Everyone can see you. What are you thinking? Traffic is backed up through the park because of you. Don't you hear all those horns honking? You gotta move now. I was afraid to turn around. Kathy whispered to me that it was a New York City cop. He wasn't leaving. I was paralyzed. I shut my eyes and I tried to disappear. I knew he could bust me, even put me in jail when he saw I was a woman. I took a deep breath, gently took my hand out of Kathy's pants, pulled down her shirt, sat up and turned around. The cop looked at me square in the face and took a double step back. Red-faced, no longer amused, he said very slowly, with the weight of disgust in his voice, "You gotta go. You can't do this shit in my park. Everything is a mess because of you. For Christ's sake, leave now." He was so clearly repulsed by who I was. He was so clearly repulsed by who I turned out to be, it made me think of my father. Kathy and I climbed down the very tiny rock in the very crowded area and walked through the park holding hands in complete and profound silence. We went back to the children's zoo and sat by the clock that had the black metal animals that rotated around each other and clanged the bell on every hour. We just sat there till dark, smoking cigarettes, drinking Cokes, watching the world passing by through our sunglassed eyes. I wanted to say volumes to Kathy, who had no idea of this side of the life, but all I could do was shrug my shoulders and mutter, "I'm sorry." We took the subway back down to the apartment. When we got there, we cooked what seemed like 3 pounds of spaghetti, and as I poured the steaming, boiling water into the colander Kathy was holding, we started to kiss, and we were off wildly fucking. Then Kathy slept. As dawn set in, I watched the glow out the living room window change from velvety black to purple, to the many shades of blue, pink, gold, until it was finally full-on daylight. I played John Lennon's album over and over and over and thought, what must it be like to love someone as much as he loved Yoko? And if I feel this devastated, what must she feel like? I decided to stop taking the sugar cubes, and I sat in that same exact spot until it was pitch black dark out again. It had at some point started snowing, and just before midnight, Kathy took me out into it to bring in my birthday. I was, of course, still extremely high, and the snowflakes glistened in that way that looked like teardrops, and I thought of that book, Go Ask Alice, when she's high and it's raining and Alice is convinced it's God crying on her. Well, that made me laugh really hard, and somehow feeling really good for the first time in the longest while. Kathy and I finally made snow angels, and without saying a word, with a finger in the snow under the angel, she wrote, "John loves Yoko, I love you." We walked home really slowly, arm in arm, watching our own footsteps, seeing no other path laid out for us except the ones we were making for ourselves. The city was really quiet and really still. My heart was really calm, and I was 20 years old.
Person changed them because Jean Fedorko showed up, and Jean I've been wanting to have for a long time, so I'm so glad that you're here. And we're new friends. I meet all these new people who, like, why didn't we know each other? Like Eric, who's over here, or these people, like, we've been traveling the same, Patrick back there, traveling the same path for so long, but you never meet, and so now we've met, and I'm very glad. So Jean, a friend from P-Town and New York.
Nora, I knew you before I knew you. Yeah. A little backstory here. I lived in Provincetown through the 1970s, and the 70s were wild and reckless and full of all kinds of psychedelic insanity and excess. And I had been living in Provincetown for 8 years, and the 70s for me had been a lot of horrible romances, good romances, drug busts, nervous breakdowns, owing my dealer a lot of money. The IRS was up my ass, you know. So that takes us to 1981, and I made this entry into a book. Provincetown, February the 20th, 1981. I hate this fucking town. It's too small. Everybody knows your business. Everybody's up your ass, and I'm bored as shit. Okay. The next entry is Provincetown, March 11th, 1981. John called. He's leaving New York and moving to Paris for a year, and wants to know if I want to come down and watch The Loft for a year while he is gone. I'm out of my mind with excitement. Oh my God, back to New York. I lived there in the early 60s, and I've been trying to get back there for over a decade, but I was institutionalized for amphetamine abuse and lots of other stuff and drama, but I'm clean now, and I think I am equal to the city, and it's not going to devour me this time. Okay, next entry. New York, April the 20th, 1981. I drove some stuff down to the Loft. The name on the buzzer says Fire and Ice. What does that mean, I wonder? Jimmy does a lot of coke, so maybe that's it. The space is grand. It's half a block long, tall ceilings, lots of light, lots of window. The lobby is an accident waiting to happen. The elevator smells of poppers. The loft smells like cat piss. One of the Burmese cats that John had was sick. John takes them to the cat psychiatrist every week at great expense. And of course, none of us have any money. Next entry, New York, May the 20th, 1981. I drove more stuff down to the Loft. I can't wait to move in. The buzzer now says, I period film, all in capital letters. I period film is the new roommate. He makes these little magazines of the photos that he takes, mostly at gay bars and back rooms, and he Xeroxes the pages together very crudely, staples them. They're weird, but they have a certain energy. He thinks eventually they're going to build up and become Vogue or Esquire. The bathroom shower stall has all sorts of color stains on it, the floor too. I film tie-dye chiffon in a big tub in the shower, and he makes these robes, muumuus, gowns, dresses for his clientele, who are mostly women on the Zuftig side of the fence. I met him later, and he is a ball of energy, but he talks too much. I like him anyway. He is a little pixie of a creature. Next entry is New York, June 22nd, 1960. The big day came. My move to New York. It seems monumental. Oh, I'm so excited. Packed up a big U-Haul and drove down. What excitement. Lovely friends came over and they helped me unload the U-Haul, get the things upstairs. The elevator reeked of poppers. The neighbors seemed nice considering we tied up the one elevator all day and the evening. These two S&M guys in leather gear who looked real mean and nasty came down in the elevator, but they were very nice and welcomed me to the building. These were the guys who made the elevator smell like poppers, according to John. Okay, I was beat, I was exhausted. We got everything upstairs. I made a little nest on the floor of a mattress, and I lay down with my dog to read myself to sleep. I wondered how my dog was going to adjust to the big city. She had been used to running back and forth across the clam flats in Provincetown for years and years. She was a free spirit. I was reading Gay Talisa's book called Thy Neighbor's Wife. It was a history of sexual mores in America from Puritanism until the present time. I opened the book to where I had left off, and then here comes one of these big coincidences that are right out of William Burroughs of my life. It was like a true holy shit moment. I couldn't believe it. 2 or 3 paragraphs into the book, I came across the loose history of the building I had just moved into officially only moments ago. Gay Talese had given my building like a third of a chapter in his book. I'm like, holy shit, what's up here? It turns out that the Communist Party of America used to be on the 12th floor of my building. The FBI was in the office across the street to monitor them. Screw Magazine and its notorious publisher, Al Goldstein, was on 10. The first massage parlor in the 70s was on 6 to service the staff and visitors to Screw Magazine. Homosexual porn was published on 5, heterosexual porn was published on 2, and the Eulenspiegel Society, a consortium of gay men's S&M groups, was on 11. Surely they were the ancestors of the guys who smelled the elevator up with poppers all the time. There is a small cartouche above the second floor windows with the initials EWB. It stands for Edmund West Browning. He was an industrial magnate and a dirty old man who, according to Gay Talese, fell in love with a piece of high school chicken who went to school on 16th Street. Her name was Peaches Heenan. She was a curly hair, redhead lass. Miss Heenan was 16. Mr. Browning was in his 60s, and even in the roaring 20s, this scandalized the city, and it was a banquet for all the tabloids. He would send his chauffeur to pick her up at school every day. He was bald, and they were easy caricatures of themselves. Turns out that the comic strip Little Orphan Annie was modeled after these blokes. And later, the Broadway musical Annie with Annie and Big Daddy Warbucks followed suit. Wow, I couldn't believe the uncanny coincidence. I was starstruck. My building in New York. I felt like I was on a cosmic roller coaster riding it into the eye of God. We should have a bronze plaque outside by the buzzer system. I couldn't sleep. I took the dog out for a walk. 2 guys in chaps from the 11th floor, smelling of poppers, were in the elevator. Stoned, we made awkward pleasantries, but they were so gone, nothing made sense. They walked toward the west side, probably to one of the clubs, or the blowjob palaces, or the piers, or the trucks. Holy shit, I said to my dog. You gotta love this city. This is one motherfucking city.
Thank you, Gene. I'm so glad we met. All right, next up, all the way from Nashville, she's back in town. Give it up for Katy K.
Well, here we go. I think my early days are earlier than everybody else's. But anyway, this is me, 1966, in Greenwich Village, New York City. Just like I pictured it, skyscrapers and everything. That's a Stevie Wonder reference for everybody under 50. But anyway, I moved into the NYU dorms on University Place. And it was kind of like a prison. We had little tiny bunk beds and cinder block walls and a teeny tiny closet. Anyway, who cares? I'm in the village. I am in the village. Boys with long hair playing guitars in Washington Square Park, and girls with peasant blouses and hoop earrings. I wanted to be them. Anyway, I thought I was pretty cool at the time with my wide-wailed corduroy bell-bottom pantsuit with leather lacing down the back. And my hair was straightened, dyed black. I had bangs down to my false eyelashes and heavy black eyeliner, with Cher. But The interesting thing is, I moved up to a commune in '68 with my draft dodger boyfriend, Sky Blue, and I stopped wearing makeup, but the eyeliner kept appearing like for 2 weeks. It was just in my pores. Anyway, back to the dorm. Luckily, I brought my portable record player because WABC was so lame in those days, playing Gary Lewis and the Playboys and Dino Desi and Billy. I was listening to Lady Jane and Mother's Little Helper from the Stones album, along with my folk music, Jim Kweskin Jug Band and Mississippi John Hurt. I was cool, I thought. At NYU, we had a little circle of friends that hung out in the lobby at Weinstein, and I had one particular friend that became a mentor to me who was telling me about this really cool guy that was in the dorm that just got kicked out for smoking pot. And he liked anything Gold LeMay. He listened to R&B instead of folk rock. He loved Tina Turner. It turned out it was John Waters. Anyway, I didn't even know what kitsch was back then. But anyway, we went to clubs in the village like the Cafe A Go-Go on Bleecker Street to see the Fugs, and Julie Kupferberg hit on me. I also saw Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys and Jesse Colin Young. I heard the Love and Spoonful of Cafe Wah, and Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention were doing like a really long gig at the Garrick Theater, and that was an eye-opener. Jeff Black, the Indian in the group, that's another story. But okay, I observed disdainfully how the tourists in the West Village streets looked at the beatniks. I considered myself a native, even though I'd only been there a couple weeks. My very first boyfriend, Raymond, had long brown hair and a Fu Manchu mustache. He lived on East 5th and Avenue D with a bathtub in the kitchen, like I'm sure most of you have. I lost my virginity to him listening to the Fugs Kill for Peace. Raymond taught me how to clean grass with the top of a cardboard shoebox and how to use paper Tampax wrappers to roll joints when the cigarette papers ran out. It's a skill. I had wanted to smoke grass my last years in high school, but going to a girls' private school in Philadelphia didn't allow me much time for experiments. So man, I was ready. I was ready. He also introduced me to snorting meth before riding the roller coaster at Coney Island. We would take the subway out there. I was so pumped up I could have run alongside the train all the way to Coney Island. But they still actually had cane seats in some of the subways and the leather straps, and we used these little silver tokens that only cost 20 cents. But one of my first memories of really getting high on pot was when I went to the Bleecker Street Cinema to see Kenneth Anger's Scorpio Rising. I wasn't quite sure if it was as fabulous a movie as I thought, or I was just stoned. I was blown away by the soundtrack, which was the pop music of my younger days. Ricky Nelson, the Angels, the Crystals. I still like that stuff. But it was the first time that I'd ever seen music used as an ironic commentary. Later, of course, John Waters did this very well. But I was totally oblivious to the homoeroticism and was just thrilled to see representations of my rebel icons, James Dean and Marlon Brando. Speaking of oblivious, I would walk by the Julius Bar on 10th Street and give my best come hither look to all these cute guys out there. I didn't know it was a gay bar. I'm not sure if I even knew what gay was back then. But I remember my father remarking on my piano teacher being light in his loafers. But I thought that was something about his footwear. I didn't know his sexual preference. Anyway, having been a virgin and knowing nothing about birth control, I got pregnant fairly quickly. One of the girls in the dorm told me about a doctor uptown who would give me a shot to bring on my period. Well, after getting the shot and being molested by the doctor, I'd never even had a pelvic exam before, I went back to the dorm to wait for my period, which never came. Eventually, I got the number of another doctor who would do the operation. I didn't want my mom to know, so I couldn't get a letter from a shrink, and I didn't have enough money to go to Puerto Rico where you could get it done in a hospital. My friend Elizabeth, who was also pregnant, got a woman to come up to her apartment in the East Village to insert a rubber tube in her to bring on a miscarriage. It worked, but she died 3 days later, septic shock. So I had no choice. I had to go to the doctor, the number I had gotten. Anyway, the operation was a nightmare. He put some kind of gas mask on my face and started cutting, and then it hurt like hell. When I started crying, he said, "What's the matter? Your boyfriend was bigger than this." This is the way doctors felt licensed to talk to girls in those days. Anyway, after the experience, I can't believe that we're rolling back the clock for abortion. 3 or 4 generations later, after my time, have we forgotten how terrifying and dangerous it was to have a bunch of creeps decide what happens to our bodies? We didn't have social media then. I mean, we had the Village Voice, the East Village Eye. We didn't have social media, but there was still a culture that felt solidarity and was able to protest racism, the Vietnam War, sexism. I want to know, what can I do? I mean, what can we do? That's what I mean to say, what can we do? That's it.
Thank you. And that's pre the whole next iteration of Katy K and John Sex, and so I'm glad that'll be the second part. You have to come back next time you're here from Nashville. So next, Jeff Cora, Nickora, another old new friend, who it turns out worked at Max's Kansas City with my other dear old friend Bob, who's here. So, Jeff.
I didn't really write anything, but when Nora's invitation came, it was about your first year in New York, and all these memories began to flood me. And I came so long ago, 55 years ago, that I hadn't thought about my first year in New York for decades. And my first 10 years seemed like 6 months. But in the fall of 1963, when President Kennedy was shot, my university had switched from semesters to trimesters. And going from class one day, there was a big poster on the wall saying, "Jobs at the New York World's Fair." So 3 or 4 of my friends, we applied and got hired and got to move to New York with a job. And because I worked at the Ford Pavilion, it's so hard to remember that, to imagine that they provided everything. Our uniforms, our jackets, our coats, our shoes, our everything. And we had an 8-hour workday. There were 200 kids, and we had to be fresh all the time. So we worked for 30 minutes on, 30 minutes off, 2 hours for lunch, and then that was our day. And it was just an extraordinary time. Ford, the pavilion itself is beautiful. The whole fair experience was great. Philip Johnson had designed the New York State Pavilion, and there was a big scandal for Andy Warhol's 13 Most Wanted. And when that was taking place, it was kind of interesting. And that's when I first met Warhol and his crowd. And they weren't famous yet, which was really cool. When we moved, we stayed at the Y. I came with a friend, Roger. We took a room at the 23rd Street Y until we could find a more suitable place to stay. We found a cheap hotel in Madison called the Warrington. It's still there, but it's a medical suite place now. We had the cheapest room.
How much was it?
Oh God, like $20 a week. It was like nothing. But we had the cheapest room, so sometimes when we worked various shifts and the managers thought we weren't there, we'd be asleep. And they'd show other people the $20 room. It's crazy. But you know, being as old as I am, I just learned that there's only 5% of the population that's older than I am. And I can't believe that, you know, everything changed so quickly, and all those years were so wonderful. But then growing up too in those years, there were the periods of growth for boys was, in Michigan, you got to drive a car when you were 16. You had to register for the draft when you were 18. And you couldn't, you had to stay registered until you were 30. You thought you were going to be 30 when you were 18. And then at 21 we got to vote. So I got to move here. And I don't like leaving. It's my home. And so my first year was actually 2. And learning the city. You know, we'd go after work. And there was a club on 54th Street called Upstairs and Downstairs, downstairs at the upstairs. And Mabel Mercy used to sing. And she liked having us there. We took her to the fair, we did things like that. It didn't cost an arm and a leg to go out to places and just have nice evenings.
And how did you start working at Max's?
Well, that's years later. Again, fair. Well, Max's. There was another universe.
Well, you'll have to come back and do that.
It was wonderful, all of it. And I hope things turn around and get better, because I came here in a very encouraging time, and everything in my youth was forward-looking and progressive. And the part of history that we're living now is just too cruel, too backward, too wrong. And we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Jeffrey Cora for Vice President. The ticket. All right. So, someone we all know keeps an amazing diary. My fellow unitard, Mike Albo. And by the way, just to give a plug, we'll be at Joe's Pub on October 30th.
Thank you, Nora. You're the coolest person ever. She's great. Okay. All right. My apologies for the pretentious little fucking twink you're about to meet. So I moved to New York in January 1993. When I first moved here, I lived with my friend Shannon, who was my college friend, who was the daughter of a Southern newspaper scion. So I lived in this beautiful penthouse apartment, and then I moved to 12th Street between Avenue A and B with my roommate Jill in a little tiny place that was disgusting. And I worked at a not-for-profit called Volunteer Lawyers for the Arts, which is still around. It's a really great place. And I didn't do any work, and I totally abused that place, and wrote letters all day and photocopied them. So this is but my diary from that time is both entries and also letters to people. Okay. January 13th, 1993. Last night here at the Lux apartment of Shannon Lorraine's, 16th floor, 5th Avenue, number 24, betwixt 9th and 10th Street. Last night, Lorraine and I went to a party in Tribeca, a big old place occupied by Lorraine's friend Pilar, sort of snotty but sweet, and her roommate, who won the Academy Award for special effects by inventing that liquid metal shtick used in T2. A woman named Paula, pronounced pretentiously, danced. She was very nice. Lorraine and I simply sat in the corner and people came over to us and introduced themselves. This cute British guy named Tim, this wonderful dorky girl named Jennifer from Arizona, and this awful Euro shit named Hulver or something. February 12th, 1993. Last night I went out for a brief time to the Crow Bar, just a few blocks away, and it was spunk night. I sat at the bar and had 2 beers, $2.75 each, and watched while this white blonde boy porn. Stubbly dicks and dish liquid cum. I was bored and I knew I must suck it up and go to the back room. Okay, then there's this long explanation of the back room, which is just too long, but I'm just like, the men move like stalks of wheat. It's just really pretentious. All right, April 4th, 1993. I had sex 3 times now. I think it's finally out of me. Sex is so easy to come by here. I went to Wonder Bar and met this guy named Rodriguez, whose accent I couldn't comprehend. He took me to a Brazilian party on Ninth Street. I met Coco, Mia, Pilar, a different Pilar. All said hi, but no one wanted to talk, and we all danced. If I stopped dancing, they would force me to get up and dance some more to Brazilian pop music. Then Cream by Prince came on, and everyone yelled, "Prince, Prince!" Later, Rodriguez convinced me to go back to his place. It's not like I put up a fight. I was so ambivalent about it, but I just thought, why the hell not? Dear Bill. Bill's like one of my oldest friends. I'm at work, once again robbing it of vital time, work power. Enclosed is a copy of the script from the first part of Angels in America, which Volunteers for the Arts is hosting a benefit performance of, or hosted 2 weeks ago. I handed the awful work that is involved in throwing a benefit, including sending out invitations, booking tickets, talking to hideous Upper East Side rich people all day who are mad at you for some reason they crustily and coldly tell you on the phone, yet they never articulate the real reason they hate you, that you are young. Little do they know that you hate yourself because you're young too, and wish you had a lot of money, no sex drive, and lots of accessories such as vases and frames. Oh, how neat! Valley of the Dolls by Dionne Warwick just came on the radio. The play's been nominated for like 1,000 Tony Awards. Being that I arranged the seating, I sat myself in the front row with my knees hitting the stage, actors spit hitting me, dry ice burning my eyes. It's supposed to be very emotional and intense, but I never feel that way in live theater. Do you? Plays bug me. Anyway, Angels was very good though. The characters were all really cute. This guy, David Marshall Grant, who played the gay guy in 30-something, is in it. I spent a lot of the time staring at the actors while they were off-center, in the dark, frozen, looking out into the audience. I focused particularly on Belize, the black nurse character. At the curtain call, he stared at me, and I smiled back, and I ran giggly-wiggly all the way home. Oh, Annette Bening, Cicely Tyson, Dolly Parton, Kelly, and Calvin Klein were there, but I only saw Calvin. I imagine him looking over the crowd, eyes passing over me, and him thinking, that body needs Soloflex and a wax job. Since I wrote to you, I've slept with, let's see, Don, this sexy guy in a gross apartment on Avenue C, who I thought was so manly and hot, but then I woke up the next morning and found out he designed sweaters for Benetton. And I looked across the room and saw a giant knitting machine with huge spools of yarn in color of rainbows that piled next to it. Meanwhile, that's like my perfect guy right now. Rich, question mark, this cute Hispanish-ish Long Island native graphic designer who has a really big dick and was very sweet and called me in to do something, but I never took him up on it because conversation was just me. Stupid. Torn, this skinhead I met in March. Skinhead was not a derogatory term back then. Rodriguez, a French Brazilian who wore espadrilles and a black turtleneck and put 3 condoms on me and asked me in a difficult to understand accent to screw him slowly. June something, 1 a.m. I fooled around with this guy George, who is apparently a model who has candles lit in a small apartment a block away from to commemorate his friend who just passed away. A friend who came to NYC from from CA to take care of a sick friend. A sad moment, and I said I'm sorry, and he said he didn't want any sympathy. We were both very drunk, and he made me promise to call him, and I did, and he called back, and he said he was busy all week, and then I never called back, or then he never called back, and I just called him today, and again, 0 reply. And then I figure out who the cute waiter is at Bandito, this dumb restaurant. Remember? Okay, lots of happens there for me. Irina, me, Benny, and their stupid blonde friend stumbled into it. It's Michael, the guy Bill went out with early in college. I know it's him. June 3rd. Dear Gail, here I am at work again, quietly disturbing the efficiency of the office, my own little revolution. Are you frightened to the core about the strange sickness in the Southwest that's killed 13 Navajos? Nothing chills me more than disease. Tonight I have a date with this guy I fooled around with 2 weeks ago, George. He's a model for commercials. He was in 2 Budweiser ads, and a Rick Astley video, and soon to be in a Minute Maid ad. June 28, 1993. Larry and David came to visit for the Gay Pride March here. In the morning, David, Larry, and I went to Michael's boyfriend's apartment to drink before the march. Who is Michael? Go back to the summer I lived down in Florida and Bill dated Michael for 2 weeks. It was him the other night I motioned to him as he rushed around waiting tables at Bandito and said, "Your name is Michael, you live in Florida, and you have a friend named Hugo." And he said, "Yes, your name is Mike." So anyway, he has a boyfriend, which is unfortunate because I thought he was kind of cute. At the apartment, we met Dennis, Michael's cute but sissy bitchy boyfriend. And Bob, Dennis's roommate. Bob seemed cute and nice, but at the same time I was focused on Michael. I didn't even really begin to comprehend how cute and attractive he was. We all went to the march with water guns, and I got a pistol with a leak from the hole where the handle was. We went to Washington Square Park and promptly commenced squirting everyone we could. I had no reservations and nailed whoever I wanted to. I ran to try to meet Jill and carry my gun like I was on a mission. People would smile and pretend to be scared, and I was kind of drunk and happy and running. Could you imagine doing that now? I've got a gun! We never found Jill, and the 6 of us decided to enter the parade. Michael wanted to march with the pagans, and we filled in. The pagans are cute, scruffy bunch of hairy O's. I don't know what O's means. Like lesbians and round men, and one very pretty little skinhead guy, and a woman with a ferret. Dennis and I held hands and shot the shit out of people until he tripped over my leg and fell into the crowd, and the crowd on either side of us heartily laughed at him. When we got to 7th, Christopher, we disbanded and refilled our guns at the Riviera. Michael and I were waiting and talking, and I decided to kiss him. At that point, I was pretty sauced, and I just kissed him, all right? And then he let me, but he did not move his lips. I don't remember how much time passed between this and the next moment, but it wasn't much. So I moved over to where Bob was and waited for him, with him, just putting my drunk arm around him, and he surprisingly returned the gesture with a drunk hand on my drunk arm. And then the 5 of us attempted to walk through the crowd, and Bob and I holding onto each other, and Bob behind me, and I felt his arm go around my waist. July 6th. So Bob and I have been hanging out a lot this week. We slept together the night of Pride, and he wanted to fuck me, but I wanted him to, but his dick is so big, I really needed to prepare for it. So I told him I wanted to hold off a little, and he thought that was a sweet gesture, like a let's wait a while type thing. He is very, very hot. His body is so good. Sometimes I stare at him. Sometimes I stare at him, trying to understand his inner life, but it reveals nothing. I love to watch him. Okay, wait, sorry. I love to watch him while he just stares off in space after agreeing with you and saying, yeah. Last Saturday, he, Larry, Dennis, and Michael and I went out drinking. I only had to eat broccoli and a popsicle and had a 10-ounce beer. I was drunk and wanted to be, all loose for anal canal penetration. When we got back to his place, we got to bed. I said, I'm crazy about you, and he said, I like you too. And then I said, I didn't know, then he said, I didn't know all the strange things about him, which I can't imagine. What will it be? Is he taking Prozac? Like he's seen some awful horrors? What? He probably thinks he's weird. Okay, how many people in the world do think that? I'm so sick of the cult of quirkiness. It all started with Ann Beatty, and it's resulted in northern exposure in Key West. How annoying. Then he said he hoped I wasn't mad at him for going out with his friends the other night before. At that point, I began measuring my ability to interact with him like a human, because within me, there was a growing, spinning force of nausea swelling inside me. I had to puke really badly. And I ran to the bathroom and had to wait for Dennis for an eon, and ran in and puked crazily for another 4 hours or so, and I was bent over these people's toilet. At one point I had to poo, so I shit, and then I had to puke again, so I turned around and puked. All the while shit was pushed out of me, a little runny pile forming on the hot tile. I I wiped it up and tried to get out the stain with hydrogen peroxide. I puked again. But about 6 a.m. or so, I felt human enough to return to bed, and Bob and I had a little jerk-off thing, and he fucked me between my thighs in the morning. Then we went to 7A for breakfast. I still felt queasy. We, Dennis, Michael, and Bob and I, decided to go to the beach, which was perfect. There was a group of gay people under a pink triangle flag. Carl was there looking hot. Bob and I kissed in the waves, all the lesbians topless, all the seaweed floating. July 9th, we clutched onto each other all night. In the morning, we walked to his bus stop, and I gave him 25 cents for the bus, and he thanked me, embracing me in public, and kissing me like he seemed to do all weekend. Then last night I called him, and then I didn't hear from him. Last entry, I don't know what date it was. Last night, I put on my yellow OP shirt and went to the Key Food to get $10 of food that will hopefully last me through the week, because I have no money and I'm very scared about my financial situation right now. And I walked in clutching coupons and saw Bob in the express line, his back to me. I stood next to him until he noticed me, and finally he did, and he basically said, "Hi." The conversation was awfully pleasant, about rollerblades and the 4 basic food groups. He told me he didn't even need to go to his parents, and I foolishly told him that Nelson saw him at Sugar Babies last Monday, and he said he didn't know Nelson, and making it obvious that I had been talking about him with a stranger, enough for that person to scout and spot him. He told me to call him, and I said, "Why don't you call me if you want to?" And just to close up, so Dennis and Michael broke up, and then Bob and I, of course, broke up, and then Bob and Michael started dating, which they really wanted to do the entire time, and then they broke up, and then I had sex with Bob again, and then I had sex with Michael again, and they got back together, and then they broke up, then I had sex with Bob again, and I had sex with Michael again, and we weirdly kind of came in each other's eyes in this weird way, and now Michael and Bob are like together, and they live somewhere, I don't know where, but they're like together forever, and they're like some married couple, and that's it.
Lots of photographs, which I kept in a box of stuff. That's from, Temple Rose product. Thank you. So here we go. I moved to New York in 1982. I was 25, and I think it was kind of cute. Whatever. Anyway, actually my quest for fabulousness began when I was a senior at Louisiana State University in 1979. That was a great year for disco, right, Nora?
Yep, the best.
There we go. That senior year, I met a fellow student in advertising design class named Tom Pettijohn, who quickly became my best friend and basically changed my life. He introduced me to the culture of fashion photography and art. Helmut Newton, Bruce Weber, Deborah Tuberville, Mel Odom, Richard Bernstein, just to name a few. We both became obsessed with Grace Jones and her music. And Charles Jourdan ads, of course. We would rush to the Baton Rouge newsstand each month to buy the latest issue of our favorite magazines, GQ, Vogue, Interview, and Blue Boy. Yeah, if you're old enough to remember Blue Boy, it really had good art direction back then. At least we thought so. Tom remarked that he was destined to live in New York, and I should move there with him. I said, nah, I wanted to live in Houston. So after we both graduated in 1979, I moved to Houston, and Tom moved to New York. Tom begged me to come visit him in New York. So I did, and that was it. I was hooked. I knew I had to move here. Tom said, you can move in with me and my roommate. So I arrived in Manhattan on a cold Sunday afternoon in January. There were mounds of snow all over the streets and sidewalks. Do you remember when New York had snow on the ground almost the entire winter? Dear Donald Trump, no, we won't go there. Tom's apartment, my new home, was the 4th floor of a brownstone on 56 East 58th Street, between Park and Madison, now the site of the Four Seasons Hotel. I showed up with my possessions packed inside a large green metal footlocker. I buzzed. No answer. I buzzed again.
No answer. Finally, after several more buzzes and 20 minutes or so in the cold, my friend Tom came down to the front door wearing a huge oversized Norma Kamali sweater and greeted me with his soap opera style voice. "So sorry, darling. Mama's a little hungover. I was out way too late last night." Once inside, Tom said, "So glad you're here. Just get settled and do some coke because it's Sunday and we have to go out for the evening. We have to go to the Upper East Side to Cahoots for Beer Bust." If you remember that. Thank you. So we went, and after several hours later, it was on to Uncle Charlie's, and ties, and Ninth Circle, and boots and saddles, or bras and girdles, as we remember it back then. And we finally ended up at the Anvil. That little seedy place, the After Hours Club, nestled among the meatpacking markets on the 14th Street and West Side Highway. We arrived, and as I stepped out of the cab and took a whiff of the stench from the nearby markets, I said with a little drunken horror, "What is this place?" Tom said, "Oh, honey, they play the latest music here and have fabulous drag shows. You will love Miss Candy Stevens and Ruby Rims." And you know what? I did. Of course, this was way before the glitz and glamour of RuPaul's Drag Race. On Saturday nights, it seemed that no matter where my group of friends went and we started out, somehow we would always end up at that Anvil. Oh. Well, at least the boys, not the girls, because they weren't allowed in. Sad. We tried to make it sound more sophisticated by referring to it as Lionville. But it was always the same old raunchy place that we loved. Anyway, I finally stumbled back to the apartment around 7 a.m. that morning. Holly-go-lightly, I was not. And to begin, that's the way I began my life in New York City. And we would often run into, guess who was living in the apartment below us? Bruce Weber. We'd often run into models and coming in and out of the building. Okay, I have to admit, actually one time Tom and I went through the garbage that they threw out and found lots of 35 millimeters of Jeff Haquilon, our favorite model. So, no shame there. Hashtag no shame. So, and with the Plaza Hotel in Central Park just blocks away, I really felt like I had arrived in New York. Could life really be this fabulous for me in New York City? Well, of course we were both broke. So, one night several months later, Tom and I were invited to a loft on East 11th Street, where his friend Candy and her roommates were having a party. I remember it being a really fun party, and lots of cute guys, all that kind of stuff. Candy was this cute, sort of skinny blonde girl with an 80s shag-style haircut and bar-room glasses. She was working at Hearst Magazines, and she said, "You should check them out for a job." Well, a few months later I did, and was fortunate enough to get hired as the production manager at Connoisseur Magazine. Wow, I really had a job at Hearst Magazines in New York City. Whoa. Candy worked in the editorial department at Redbook. We started sending amusing little emails and notes, not emails, sorry. We started sending amusing notes and letters to each other through inter-office mail. She always signed hers with a heart. We became friends and occasionally met for lunch. I kept all those letters and notes in my box of stuff. Around 1986, while moving to my third apartment, I found these letters and notes and thought, why do I need these? I had lost touch with Candy, haven't seen her in a while, whatever. What could they possibly mean to me later in life? So I tossed them. Now I really regret it because Candy was Candace Bushnell. Famous for, of course, Sex and the City. Yeah. When I moved in with Tom, he was between jobs as as a magazine editor and writer, and I didn't start interviewing right away. So we would stay up late at night and sleep during the day. During the week, we would rent VHS movies from the neighborhood video store. Remember those? Like All About Eve, The Women, Annie Main, and of course our favorite, Mommy Dearest, which had just come out in theaters the year before. One night while watching Mommy Dearest, we decided to pause and play the movie periodically and write down those lines from our favorite scenes, which was later I typed into scripts. I know it's silly, but creative. On weekends it would be Sunday nights at Studio 54, Friday happy hour at Rounds, Region East, and Uncle Charlie's, Saturday nights at all kinds of places, Pyramid, Alex in Wonderland, I have no idea where that one was. East Village and West Village, but usually ending up at the Anvil, of course. It was also in 1982 that I discovered the Saint. The private men's club in the East Village that had formerly been the Fillmore East, where rock legends performed in the 70s. It was incredible. And you know what, it was actually my doctor that took me there for the first time. Hashtag decadence. Thousands of men dancing under a huge dome that was once used in a planetarium, along with a hydraulic star machine that would move up and down, projecting zodiacs and star machines onto the ceiling, all above a 5,000 square foot circular dance floor with pulsating music. This is beyond anything I'd ever experienced. During the night, a large mirror ball would ascend from a hidden trapdoor at the top of the dome, only hours later to ascend and become completely hidden again. I was told that Grace Jones descended on that mirror ball when she performed there, but I'm not sure that really happened. I don't know. But as Sally Bowles would say, it was divine decadence. Then the following year, the club area opened. Oh my God, this was a whole new world of crazy fun. Like the time my friends and I met Boy George and Jamera, his 6.5-foot transvestite friend, walking into the club, and we danced him with all night, but okay, those stories have to wait for Nora's next installment.
Was in the meatpacking district, and I know because one night I tried to go see Sylvester at 12 West, and they wouldn't let me in, so I went to Alex in Wonderland, and 2 Tons of Fun were performing. It's raining men. It was before they became the Weather Girls. So anyway, thank you so much for coming. I love you all, and love you. I am giving you my show, David's Friend, at Dixon Place on October 23rd.